you might get the basic details about an email, but it'll be hard to get details about the content and the attachment. There can be n number of things on an email. It's just
Right.
you just don't need the subject and from and to, right? You need other details also.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Hey Dan, how are you?
Hello.
Hey Sam.
Good evening, everybody. Hi, Sam.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
Saurabh.
Hi
Dan.
Sandeep sir.
I
Okay.
Congratulations, Sarah, for the MVP.
Oh, thanks.
Congratulations, Saurabh.
Yes.
Thanks, man.
Congratulations.
I wasn't surprised. Glad you made that. Yeah.
I kind of missed my email, and I found it out later on LinkedIn when everybody was posting. I was like, oh, maybe I didn't get renewed this year. And then I checked my email later. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, as we discussed last week, we'll just go through some of the questions that are there in the form that's available on the website. They're not very so many questions that will cover the whole session, so maybe we can open it up after that if required. So the date is old because I forgot to change the date. This is from the last week, I guess. But this is our 88th meeting, and people who are watching the recording later, and if they would like to attend this meeting, this is the link that you go to, where this link gets updated after this meeting about the next meeting invite. If you are here in the meeting and you're not part of the default attendee, then you can just drop your name and email in the chat, and then you will not have to bother about registering every week. Okay, so let's quickly jump into questions, and maybe we'll try to answer them together to kind of get best answers about those. So the first one is about upgrade, and it's specifically about how do you import permission sets, system and user defined from NAV 2016 Indian localization to a NAV 20 to a BC 19 Indian localization. Now, maybe does anybody know it, and then maybe I'll share my inputs based on.
You
Yes,
have
sir.
to recreate it. That's because the tables have changed in the localization. So that means the standard Microsoft has already done the work of creating the same system defined permission sets. Whatever is user defined, you have to create the delta in
Okay.
the new system. That's what we are doing. I will be happy to know anything new.
Okay.
There's also two extensions, right? One called
Right.
permissions that adds permission sets, and then here in North America, there's an NA permission set, and I'm guessing there's other regional ones.
Yeah.
And then at least my approach was we did turn those on, and then export and import using a config package, the user defined. There's a few tables you got to add, but at least you get 80-90% of your user defined permissions.
Right. Okay, so there has been a lot of changes in the permissions after NAV 2018. Microsoft moved to a structure where there were some permissions which were tagged as system, and then there was some permission tags as extensions, and there was a different set of permission which was tagged as user defined. So what was happening before then, as in BC 13 and 14, which were the last versions of NAV also, is neither partners, neither users will be able to modify permission type, which are either of type system or of type extension. And any additional permission that user would like to create will be tagged as user defined, and they were kind of getting stored in a separate table called tenant permission and tenant permission set. Now, if you look the whole structure, how Microsoft and why Microsoft changed it is because how it happens on SaaS. So in SaaS, for each customer, there is not a physical server present. the way Microsoft operates on SaaS is they have these clusters where there are multiple customers on one server, more or less, to kind of simplify this. And if somebody would like to get more details about it, I'll highly recommend to spend some time on multi-tenancy, which was released in NAV 2013 R2. That was the first time Microsoft introduced something called as multi-tenancy. The concept of multi-tenancy was around splitting your database into at least two parts. One would be an application database, and one would be there can be one or multiple tenants around it. The concept of the application database was around tables which are common to every tenant in the environment, which is permissions, permission sets, and some other tables like this. So what Microsoft was doing then is trying to say that you can split your database in a multi-tenant environment where you'll have one application database, and then you have multiple tenants around it, and all those tenants will share the same application objects. Now, this is the exact model which is implemented in SaaS, and that's the reason that any table which is part of your system app is not allowed to be extended. So if you try adding a field into any of these tables, the system will tell you that you can't do that because these are part of that application which is common in the SaaS. So you can't actually modify any of these tables. So that's where the system permissions were being stored, which was in the permission table and the permission set table in the 2 million range. Then the user defined permission and the extension permission were stored in a different table set, which was called as tenant permission and tenant permission set, which are specific to one tenant. Now, if you think from the Microsoft perspective, in SaaS, a tenant is a customer. Customer A is tenant 1, customer B is tenant 2, and that's what you see when you open your Business Central SaaS. This is your tenant ID. This is your unique identifier of your tenant. You can have multiple databases in your tenant, but this will remain common for a customer, which is the tenant ID. So in SaaS, those tenant specific permission or customer specific permission based on what extension they are using or what custom permission they are creating, they get stored in a table called tenant permission set. This was back in NAV BC 13 and BC 14. Now, as time went by, Microsoft did understood that the problem with permission as data, and this was kind of a concept in Business Central 18 or 17, and it's kind of in its final stage of removing the older way and moving to the future way. What's the future way? As Dan was saying, the permission and permission set are now will be part of apps or extensions. So if you go ahead today and create a demo database on your environment, I'm just using the Cronus or my Docker environment, and you try to filter out table with name permission, you'll see that still today there is a permission table and then there is a permission set table. But if you actually do a select, you will be surprised that there is only one permission defined in these tables, which is super, and that's it. Because after PC 18, there is a setup on your service tier where you can define, are you going to store your permission as data or as object, which is a Boolean at this moment. But going forward, that Boolean will be removed. It will follow the same Microsoft lifecycle of deprecating a feature. And as soon as that time comes, Microsoft will remove that option even from on-prem. So right now, I guess somewhere down here, you see this option called use permission set from extension, which means don't look at the data in the table. Just look at the permission that are coming with the extension. If I disable it, then the permission will be referred from these tables, from the permission set, tenant permission, and tenant permission set. So far, so good.
Yes.
Now, what happens, as in why Microsoft will do all this and why this all confusion is when you look into the permission set, now there are only two types, if I'm not wrong. One is system and one is user defined. Those are the only two valid types available in the permissions set page. One is system, and then one is if you create one custom, and that becomes your user defined. Now, as partners or as developers, we need to understand that the only permission which will be tagged as user defined will be a permission that user will be creating to do their activity, or if they want to manage their own permissions. Other than that, if you're creating an extension, it's mandatory now that you have a permission set defined. Otherwise, if you are using your Git pipelines or Azure DevOps, the pipeline fails it if there is not the permission attached to an object. So how you see that? If you're using Docker, then you go to your C and go to the folder called BC. Let me open that. Okay. To folder called BC artifact cache, and then based on your environment, you can go to the right folders. And then there is the application where you can extract the source code for base application and system application. If you're using on-prem, then the same folder structure will be available in your product DVD as it is. Now, if you go inside this, there will be some objects which will be tagged as permission sets and permissions. And the cool part is that they have also design them in a way that they can kind of extend it. And there is a permission set object. I don't know where I can see it, but let's see in the Visual Studio Code because that's an object now. So if you go to the base app and you look for permission set, you'll see all these permission set are part of the base app. These all are defined by Microsoft for the base Microsoft app. Same if there are permissions on system, they will be tagged under this. And in the same way, you can also create a new file and call this as des.pl, let's say, and you should actually create an object. If you are doing for SaaS, then surely do it. That when you are done with your extension, make sure that you have a permission set which needs an ID as any other objects will need, the name, and then is it assignable, which makes sense, as in there are some which Microsoft says that they are not assignable, and I'll tell you why those are done that way. Let me see what's the first object ID. Okay. And then what you can do is you can utilize one of the Microsoft permission that they have created, or you can utilize one of the permission that you have created if you would like to include whatever is in there in your permission set. So I can just do and include any existing permission that I have, any of these, and they will just be part of my permission set in that case, which means all these permissions. Other than that, even if, because there are very rare cases where customer would like to include anything or you would like to include anything in your extension, you can also define permissions like table data, whatever the object name is. I need to have an object for that. That's good. Okay. And I need to call it as my table. And then this is the permission. Now the permission goes into read, modify, insert, delete way, where caps on or bold characters mean it's a direct permission. Or if it is caps off, if it is written something like this as RMID, that means it's an indirect permission. You can play with that, as in if you want delete as direct, you can do it like this. On the objects where you need to give an execute permission, that goes as, in this example, let's say table, my data, oh sorry, my table. I should have a comma here. And then an X, which means an execute permission. Now let's think about it from the Microsoft perspective, how this solves the bigger picture. If tomorrow in your extension, you decide to remove this table for whatever reasons, the data will not be obsolete in those table, because if it is as a data, it'll just be an irrelevant data in that table. And somebody will have to spend time to understand where this table went, where this table ID went, and all those things. But as soon as you delete the object, your extension will not compile because you have a reference of that object in one of the permission set that you have created. So that's how Microsoft exploded the whole permission set engine from the partner perspective when they are building their extension, or from the Microsoft or ISV perspective, where it is not stored as data, but stored as an object. Now let's come to the assignable part. There are some parent permissions which can be referred in other permission set, but they cannot be directly assigned. And there will be surely some example in the base app where you can see that there are some permission set which are kind of parent and you can't modify them. Let's see, maybe here it is. No, yeah. So this is assignable false, but that doesn't mean that this permission is not used. It means that it can be part of an other permission set, but this is kind of a parent permission set, so nobody can directly assign this. But then this can be part of a child permission set who says that this is included in my permission set. So as a user, I cannot go and say, oh, I want to assign dynamic CRM admin on my user. That's not possible because the assignable is set to false. But if as an partner or as an ISV, I would like to include all these permission in one of the permission set that I'm creating, I can just add it on my existing permissions, new permission set that I'm creating, include by using include permission sets. That way it gets added. Then not just that, if it is an additive change, there is also a permission set extension, which works like any other permission set. What is the idea of it? Which one you are trying to extend? So let's give it an ID. Let's do a look up here, and you'll see all the base Microsoft permissions which are available. If it's an additive change on this permission set where I would like to include my table, I can just assign that into it. Or if I want to add one of the parent permission set, or not just the parent, but any other permission set, I can also include it till the point it's an additive change on my permission. And that's kind of the thumb rule for any extension object. You can make additive changes by using extensions, extension objects. So that's where permission set extension comes into the picture. And to simplify, what Microsoft did, that any permission which comes from any extension will always be tagged as system. So there is no system, and then there is no extension, and then there is no user defined. They all will be tagged as system, which comes from an extension, either Microsoft, ISV, or partner extension. If they are coming from an extension, they will be tagged as system. As the extension goes away, that permission set also goes away. So if I remove this Contoso coffee extension, which is a manufacturing demo extension in the Business Central 20 release, these permission will go away. And it'll not be stored as data, which someone need to then clear out later because they were not sure what these objects were, who created them, and who removed them. So for whatever reason, if I have to uninstall this, okay, because the extension is also part of this extension. Sorry, the permission is also part of this extension. They will also be removed as I remove this extension. Okay. So, and sorry, this gets loaded as a temporary page. So you'll have to close it and open it again. So you'll see that those contours or permissions are gone because they were attached to that one particular extension. Now coming to the user defined and to the specific question that someone had, what we do is, if you're coming from NAV 2016, let's say India version, you said, and just to pick a number, it's, let's say, CU35, based on which this customer was implemented or upgraded last time. And then this becomes your custom. You can export all those permissions out from this as well as from this as text, because that's an option to export as an CSV. Now you can be creative on that. There are different ways to be a little bit creative, and you can get a delta out of it. So when you extract a delta out of it by comparing these two permission sets, that's what is missing in your future version, or that's what need to go into your target version, which in this case is BC19, I guess. That's what he's asking. Once you get the delta, you will also have to note one thing, that if the permission was called A and it was modified by customer and it is A+1, you will surely create a new permission called 1 or A1 in your BC19. And then you also need to make sure that any user who earlier had A also gets an A1, which is a user defined permission. And this is a system permission now. I can't tell you the secrets behind it, but it's all possible via code if you would think about it. It's nothing. It's just data that need to be compared and extract out a delta. And once you have the delta available with you, then you can apply that delta to create new tenant permission sets, which is A1. And then using the access control table in your NAV 2016 itself, or not in NAV 2016, you'll have to go to BC14, I guess, for that. There you can understand based on access control that who have A, and then also add one more line or record an access control for them with A1. And I'm telling you, it's possible. We do it automatically and it's surely possible. But yeah, just for the India nuance, there is a problem because there is no BC14. And NAV 2016 does not have tenant permission set. So you can't actually do it for India localization because it need to have an environment where there's a tenant permission set table exists, which is not available in 2016. So that's how you do it. You do a comparison between the baseline against the custom as you do in any upgrade, and then extract the delta out of it, and then create that delta as a new permission set of type user defined via code. And then the last part is assigning that based on checking who have the actual one, which is also possible via code. Now, the manual way, if you want to do it, this is the only manual way. Okay, anything else on this one, on the permission one?
Hey, Saurav, can you
Yeah.
add, can other code be added in there? Maybe something to provide field level security or some type of filtering, or is it just kind of adding and setting the value of permissions.
For the field level security, there is an update that Microsoft said that they're bringing in Business Central 20. I haven't seen it yet, but they were bringing something which is, and let me see, maybe because my environment should have been upgraded. They were trying to bring something where you can actually exclude. I guess that's the, yeah, this is the new one. Oh, they just added it, I guess. But yeah, it doesn't add the field level security. I guess in a
No,
bigger
it does.
permission set.
It's actually on the security filter. Scroll to the right.
Yeah, but then
Yes.
as an I understand from where Dan is coming from, there are solutions in North America which specifically provide field level security, and this doesn't solve that purpose more or less.
Right. Another common customization would be to give a Boolean, on the user setup table, and then you do
Right.
a check when somebody tries to trigger that field. I just didn't know if you could put anything like that in there, a little code snippet.
Yeah, I don't know, but there I recently heard that Eric Hogward have a kind of a replacement for easy security. I haven't seen it. I heard it that eFocus have a solution for security. I still have to kind of maybe watch a YouTube video because they normally post their
Right.
previews on YouTube. But I recently heard that it's a pretty good solution, or as people are looking at it as a replacement of easy security. I don't know what all they have at this moment. But yeah, they not Microsoft is not looking on that direction at this moment on the field level side. Okay. So anything that is tagged as user defined will go and sit into the table called tenant permission set, which on-prem you can see what data is there. And that's the only thing that kind of gets stored now into the tenant permission set. I'm not super optimistic about removing these tables from Microsoft because they are still relying super based on these two tables. So maybe they'll remain for a while. But if you are going SaaS, that's the other thing, that these table does not get replicated to SaaS. So if, for the question's sake, if the customer is actually going to Business Central SaaS, then that data will, in any case, will not replicate. You'll have to export it out and then import it in SaaS if required. Okay, anything else on this one?
What difference will it make when you have got this permission sets to be created from the programming itself, from VS Code?
Oh,
The
so
only
it's
way
just,
will be we are going to create it through the code rather than manually doing it or importing it
yeah.
through configuration package.
Can you import into the tenant permission set? I'm not sure yet because that's a system table. I don't think they will allow you to import into tenant permission set. System tables are out of configuration package as far as I know. Let's check that out. I will work on it for a while. But as far as I remember,
But
they
XML
should not.
ports can be used, no?
Free?
XML ports.
Yeah, on the permission set page, there are XML port which allows you to export and import data in.
Yeah,
But
you're
yeah,
right. It's not available here.
this configuration package, because we are struggling on other things, and that's because these are system tables which are not allowed in the configuration package. But yes, when you are exporting out, you should never do these export out because they, as I said earlier, they will automatically come as part of your extension install in Business Central 19 and 20 and higher. So you don't have to worry about the system ones and yeah, for the system ones. And then the only thing that you need to worry about is the user defined, because that is something that you need to take care. The system one will automatically come with the extensions. So when you try to export in the future version, it gives you an option. Do you want to download it in a format that you can import somewhere else? Then you say no. And if you want to include them into an extension, then you say yes. So if you say yes, it should be an XML, which is bad because this was an older style of Microsoft way to add permission into extension by doing something like this, which is no longer available or will be obsolete in future. But yeah, this cannot be imported back. This can only be used into an extension. So if you are exporting it out and you want to import it somewhere else, then you should do a no here, which will download a importable format, something like this, which is a little bit different than the earlier one. So yeah, anything which is kind of coming from extension, and I'm only taking example of where the data or the extension permissions are considered. Anything in the system permission is what comes directly from the extension. And what you see on the custom permission set is what comes under user defined. User defined will never have anything on the system permission. That's how they are working on it. I still hope that there are more need to be done on permission and they have an eye on it. Let's see what else comes into it. But yeah, just eliminating the concept of permission as data removes so much clutter from the system because nobody have to maintain it now. Okay, anything else on this one? Okay. And the next one is about the versioning. And sorry, to my surprise, I did not pay that much attention to this particular article about the versioning. I thought it's a good read. Let me open that. Okay, here it is. Version numbers in Business Central. So the Business Central online on on-premises, they kind of follow the same pattern. The on-prem follows a SaaS rule, we all know. And then there are a specific specific pattern that need to be followed when you are assigning a version to your extension, which is the major, the minor, the build, and the revision. These are the 4 dots signify on a version. That whatever the major release is, which is Business Central 20 in this case, the minor, which is the cumulative update, the build, based on which against the build number that is built, and if there are any modifications or revision on that particular build. Now, when you look at from the on-premise version, it looks a little bit different, which is on the service tier, you see something like this, which is all the details as we said earlier. But if you look it on the admin center or in your, where it is, let me show it here. In your admin center here, what you will see is that it will give you the platform version. These are the 2 notations for the platform, whereas the application contains all the 4 details as we talked about. The major, the hotfix or the cumulative update, the build, and the revision around it. Now these are kind of the same details as we talked about. And these are the patch that they apply. The revision means patches on the same releases if they apply. Now the question is around how somebody assigns this or generates this on the extension that they are building. And I don't know how many, but I know there are very few people who are utilizing DevOps or GitHub to run their build pipeline. And I'm pretty sure they are in trouble by not doing that, because as we all know, the thumb rule of an extension when you release another version while you're doing active development is the new version should always be higher than the previous version. And if there are multiple developers, it's very hard to keep a check on who is using what number when they are making changes. And that's where the whole confusion starts. So yes, it makes sense to assign it here, but it doesn't fulfill the actual requirement of assigning a unique and an incremental number whenever you build your app. And that's where the Microsoft recent initiative about the free Git pipeline, more or less free Git pipeline on the GitHub public account, if you would like to try it out. And then if you are already utilizing the power of DevOps, then there are templates from Freddy. You can go to Freddy's blog, take all those templates. I don't know how they work. And I seriously, as a Business Central developer, I don't need to know how they work. But inside that, if you read that, there is a section which fetches the way it works in most of the cases. The major version is always picked based on the latest based on the latest version that's available on the Docker images when you scan for it. So you just do a scan of what is the latest version of Business Central, and it says at this point Business Central 20. Then it looks for the latest cumulative update for that major version. So like yesterday, I was working for a customer and the build was coming from our pipeline as 20.2 point some incremental numbers. But when I ran it today morning or late last night, it actually automatically changed it to 20.3 because sometime last night, the minor cumulative update 3 for Business Central 20 was released. So I don't have to go back and check every time as a developer and keep an eye on, oh, what the major version is, or the minor version is. And then the build and revision are actually incrementing numbers. And I guess what Freddy's template or someone else template, which I went a little bit deep into, was utilizing either a global number on that's stored in your secrets in Azure, or some use date and time with storing the last value that they have. And I'm only talking about the SaaS because these numbers make sense on the SaaS. As in, yes, on-prem they also make sense, but you don't need to be very specific to what the major and minor is. But you surely need to make sure that your numbers are always incrementing based on the last update that you made on that app. So if you are trying to do it without using DevOps, build pipeline, CI/CD that we call them for Business Central, not just Business Central, but in general, spend time into it because that's important on a multi-developer or on a on an implementation project where there are multiple people working simultaneously on one single project customizations or extension that you're working for them. There is no other way to keep them in sync. I don't think that there is any other way to keep them in sync. Anyone else use something else?
You would be updating the app.json, not the launch.json, right? Because app.json is actually displaying the version from Business Central client.
Right, but this is what I'm saying, right? App.json. You can't actually rely on this because let's say if you, me, Sandeep, Dan, and other people who are in this meeting, all are working on one single project. You might use one. And then while I was doing the changes, I saw that the last version that was used was, let's say, 1.5. When you and me cloned it together, you planned to use 6. I didn't know what you were doing, and I also used 6. Whosoever deploys his changes first on the customer environment, his changes will be accepted. Mine will get a warning that your version is either lower than the previous version.
But this is the same file. There is also a version tag on launch.json, different file, launch.
Version tag here?
The launch.json file, yeah.
I'm in the launch. Where is the version?
Hang on a second, there's a, yeah, on the top, line 2.
Oh, that's a different version. That's that's a version of this file. It doesn't define your extension version. As you were saying earlier, the extension version is defined from the app.json. So
Okay.
we, while we work on with our Azure DevOps, we don't care what the version is here from the developer because that's confusing. And our developers don't need to keep an eye on this version to make sure it's incrementing every time because There might be 10 or 15 people working on one project at a time. So it's impossible to manage it. So then what we do in our CI/CD is we pick the major version from whatever the latest version available for Business Central as of today. Was the latest cumulative update. So those are the two numbers that we get out of it. And then rest is, this is the build and the revision that comes based on some secrets that we have on Azure, which kind of stores a unique number and incremented irrespective of which project you are running in. So if there are 5 active projects that are being worked on and everybody is modifying code and committing it to Git, that global number increases every time. So you'll never get a lower number when you generate an app from your, from your build pipeline. And it's hard to explain, but yeah, once you start utilizing the CI/CD pipeline, you will understand the benefits of it. We, frankly speaking, I never look at the version tag on my extension if I'm working against my source control. That's the beauty of it. So I'll just remove the name of my customer from this and I'll just show you a build pipeline output that I downloaded today morning or tonight, yesterday night sometime. Okay. Here it is. If you see this one, the last file, let me do this. I have removed other details from this file, but if you see this number, which is 20, which is the latest version of Business Central at this moment, the latest cumulative update, and then an incrementing number, and then the revision number. If I go to the source control and look at my app.json, the version on app.json may say 19.0, and that doesn't matter because this number comes from my CI/CD and I don't have to worry about it. So there are good amount of blogs from Freddy where he have explained in detail about the CI/CD pipeline. He have already make public repos for CI/CD which anyone can utilize, download them, and maybe to begin with deploy them as it is on their environment, and then start tweaking as they are learning. But yeah, I don't see a reason not to use it. Let me see if I find that somewhere from Freddy. Okay, here it is. I'm pretty sure so this is the new initiative. If you haven't heard about it, I guess we talked about it in past sessions. There's this ALGO, which is kind of similar to what we do in our Azure DevOps. This is a free utility or kind of a free environment that you want to play around with. It talks about how all these things happen on a CI/CD pipeline, what are the dependencies and all. And there are multiple articles that he have written around it. At the same time, okay, he's talking about branch strategies, preview, yes, migrating, okay, telemetry, RM templates, Dockers and Business Central. I'm pretty sure he had a series because I did read about it in his blog when I was looking at it for the first time. Okay, okay, AI validation. This is for this is something that's being added for ISVs that they can run the automatic validation process by using a PowerShell command in the BC container helper. I don't know how many of us are working on that. Okay. Multi-tenant sandbox, troubleshooting on Dockers. Run AI pipeline. I guess this one it is. There are 3-4 that you have written. The hello world CI/CD sample. Yes, here it is. So the run AI pipeline is something that you can test on your local system if you have to, and then it talks about the parameters and all. But here is the Hello World CI/CD, and this is a public library that anyone can use. Here it is. You can just go here and they removed the permission. Okay, that doesn't sound good. Used to be public. Oh, he moved it here, I guess. Okay. So these are kind of storing your secrets that you'll be using in your CI/CD in your Azure portal, and then this will walk. Yeah, this will walk through everything around it from the beginning of creating a new project, cloning an existing the template that Microsoft have. Once it is done, it copies everything in, and then inside this you get a script folder. The app is where your extension sits, all your code sits inside app. The script contain all the CI/CD pipelines that are needed, and as you go forward you will see that he's doing some changes here, app changes and all. These are the dev environment. If you would like your developers to just click a button and set up a local dev environment using Dockers. So there are commands for those also here. So it automatically creates container and then you have a working environment ready. But that's not what we're talking about. Once you come here, then you need to go to your configure pipelines on your DevOps. Once you go there, there are already built-in YAML in that template, which talks about all these like variables. What are the build variables? What are the time? How you give numbers and all. So that all is defined here. And then you can also fetch your secrets that we stored in the beginning of it. What are those variables that I would like to fetch from Azure? The license file, your password, your tokens and all, you can all store them there and they'll not be exposed to your team for that matter also. And then you will have to give some permissions and all, and then it'll start running the whole pipeline inside your DevOps, which will build a container, will take the code that you have recently committed, try to publish that code into the Docker container that gets created in the build pipeline. And if everything goes well, then it compiles the app. If the app gets compiled and if there are tests and the test succeeds, then you get an artifact out of it, which is actually an app that you can use to deploy. So I think, yeah, here it is. You actually get an app which is ready to deploy. You get both of them, like the runtime package or the app. As partners, you should share apps, to be very frank. If you have automated tests, it also generates the app file for your test and an XML of the results of test. You don't have to be expert, as I said in the beginning, about the whole YAML language and all, because that's not expected. I think that's not expected from a Business Central developer. But do try it out if you are not using it. All the details are here on Freddie's blog, which will surely help you in setting up the whole pipeline. And then he goes to a next level where you can either place artifacts on, maybe on a client server or on a Teams channel or things like that. So that all is possible. But yeah, there's a lot of amount of coding. If you're not interested in, that's something else. But all that is possible using CI/CD, and all that info is available on this article that I'm showing right now. So yeah, don't rely on manually changing those numbers. Otherwise, you'll surely end up at a time where you'll be stuck on that situation where there will be problems around manual numbers. I'll just put this in chat if somebody would like to try this out. I think there are till 5 users, I guess, even, and I may be wrong. DevOps is also free for first 5 users, I guess. Like, I'm not sure about it. I think I read it somewhere.
Yeah, 5 users and unlimited stakeholders. Stakeholders can't do development.
Okay, that's good. But does those 5 users can create CI/CD inside that?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
They are super users.
Great. Yeah, then I don't think it's a harm. If you would like to play around with it, the article is in the chat and you can surely play around with it. Keshav, you were raising your hand?
Yes, means I'm not able to get the chat option.
I can't hear you, Keshav.
Sorry, I'm just saying that like I'm not able to get the chat option. So okay.
You're not able to get the chat option.
Yeah, is there any permission or anything?
I don't
Because
think
usually I get
so. Let me see if I can do something around it. Okay. Okay, labeled. Okay, let's try it out now. You should have it, I guess. Okay. Anything else on this one before we move to the next question?
Well, yeah, there's a common problem actually that you can encounter when you try to publish a new version of an extension. You get an error message like the one I just posted in the chat box. It says that there is already a new version installed. I actually encountered and stumbled upon the same problem. I was about to update the extension, update the version, and I got an error message that says you cannot install it because a newer version is already installed. You'd think that an installing the extension would solve the problem, but it worked the first time and then it didn't. I had to go fancy with some PowerShell extensions, commands. I do have a set of commands here. Hang on a second, let me copy them.
And this is the scenario that you're talking about is on-prem or SaaS?
This is on-prem.
On-prem.
No, because somebody has complained about it on Vishka Discord server. They were running a SaaS version of Business Central, and they encountered the same problem.
Yeah, and I don't know why, but I don't know why people publish directly from VS Code to SaaS sandboxes. And
well, it's fine for the sandbox. It's the protection tenant that is not advised to use. But for
no,
the sandbox,
the reason why I'm saying this, I don't understand it, because as soon as a cumulative update comes at every month, those extensions will be removed automatically. That's one reason. The second reason is if you have a dev extension, which means you publish it directly from VS Code, and if someone like me would like to follow what Microsoft says, go to extension management, select your file and install it, I can't actually upgrade that if it is a dev and then I'm trying to use it, switch it to a PDE. That surely is a problem. So if there is a dev extension, which means if an extension is published from VS Code, and then if a higher version of the same extension is published as PTE, which means going to extension management page, selecting the extension, installing it, that creates a confusion between the same extension, but of different type, one of type dev and one of type PTE in the environment. So that can be a reason, but on SaaS, the beauty is that, or even on-prem, the beauty is you can just remove that extension and then reinstall it.
It doesn't work all the time. I've tried the first time, I had the same problem. I just installed the older version and just published it from VS Code. It worked, but then I kept having the same problem. Even though I was installing the extension, it just doesn't work. So I just pasted the two main steps to follow through PowerShell. I would use a couple of commands.
Right.
The sync nav app, basically.
So, okay. So yeah,
in
the first command, if to be, to be on the best case scenario, for the first command, you don't need the version because, as I'm saying, assuming the best case scenario that you never have uninstalled extensions available on your tenant. So in that case, for the first command of uninstall, you actually don't need a version because that extension name will have only one extension and uninstall it.
Yeah, but it's required. You can't just, execute this command without the version. Even
Oh no,
though
we can. If there is only one, and that's the best case scenario that you should always have, then you can just run it without version. If you have multiple,
well, this is
then
the
you
problem.
will have.
It's taken. Yeah, it's taken. You may have 3 versions of the same extension, but just one is actually displayed. This is why I'm specifying the version. The rest of the extensions are somehow invisible. This is why I need to go with the version. This is an odd problem, quite frankly. I'm not the only person having this problem. I cannot reproduce it. It just happens sometimes.
Okay, that's weird. Yeah.
I panicked, frankly. I
Yeah.
had published the extension. I started panicking.
Yeah, but the cool part is it doesn't impact your data more or less unless you are
No,
making any force issues. Right. Yeah, as in one ops, for sure there are some problems which I hear sometime, but then people cannot replicate it. That's how it is, I guess. Okay. Let's move to the next question. This is about all lookup trigger, and I actually don't understand what else I'll cover where the person is already have referred our fellow MVP from Japan, I guess, his blog, which is a pretty detailed blog about the lookups, and then Eric's video about the lookup. I don't know what else I can add, as in I did read and watch the video, and I don't think that there is any other scenario that is left which is not covered in both of these situations. So yeah, I don't know. As in, for me, it was complete. Whatever both of them explained, Eric on video and Johan, if I'm spelling his name correctly, on his article.
Yunzu. It's actually Yunzu, the one that has.
Okay. Yeah.
Here is the website. It's got his MVP as well. Congratulations.
Yeah. He's got to load.
Chris.
So yeah, I don't know, as in what he didn't get out of it. So maybe if the person is watching the recording later, if he thinks that there are some scenarios missing, I'll be happy to talk about it. But I didn't see anything else that is missing. As in, there are table relation that defines the default lookups. There are conditional table relation that you see in your system, which can have custom lookups for that matter. Every table needs a lookup, should have a lookup page ID if you would like to use that table somewhere in the system as a lookup action so that that page can pop up. And the last but not the least is where you have a custom lookup trigger, which then shows based on whatever the code you write, which works in conjunction with on validate trigger. And there are surely some pages where you can refer those. The best example, because I don't remember these codes, the best example that I use in Business Central whenever I have to look for a lookup code is a page called budget. If you look into the budget page, it have all kind of scenarios which tells you about how different kind of lookups work, because all the options that are available in this page, maybe this is it. Let me see. Yes. So all these are kind of coming from lookup triggers, and you can surely refer all these. So there is code behind the scene for all these lookups in the page, and even the filter pane here is all based on the lookup formulas, like with GL account. This uses set selection filter, so you get all the examples. I refer this page all the time because it have all the scenarios that you can possibly have for a lookup situation. So yeah, I don't know what else I can add after those two references that are already listed in that question. Okay. Now I can't show you the report because that seems very specific. It has their customer name and all. This email, I guess I got it today, and it says that he need to design a report on an item table where it's a product catalog more or less, where there are 6 items per page with a picture, item name, item description, and unit cost or unit price. There are 4 or 5 fields from item table that they needed, that this person needed to print 6 items per page. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I replied to him also. I don't know, did he read it yet or not? To go back into the base Microsoft and refer the customer label report, because if I'm not wrong, and even there is one for W1, this report actually gives you an option, if I'm not wrong, down here where you can choose which type of layout you need. And maybe this is not the right report, not for the North America. Maybe it's for global version, had a better report, I guess. I think, yeah. So if you see this report, there are surely an option of how many columns you need in the request page. Do you need 3 columns of this size? Do you need 2 columns? Do you need 2 columns? In your situation, who have asked this question, I guess he had 2 columns, and then per page he needed 6 items. So you can just kind of take a reference of this report, and it's pretty simple here. They're using a multi-dimensional array which gets filled in based on the number of records that you have in that table and the maximum number of columns you need in your report. And then instead of using this, you can define your own formulas to fill in the array with the information that you would like to pick from your item table or item card. And then this logic is used to create or set a new variable called group number, and based on which the page break happens. So once all the columns that need to have value in one page, it automatically increases the group number. And if you see the design of this report, it's grouped on the group number, so that at any point the 6 item in your case as it is are printed on first page, it automatically breaks it to the second page even if there is some space left. So yeah, I can't write reports for you guys, but this is the right example that you can take, and it's also available in the previous versions of nav 110, which will help you to kind of design your report the way you want it. Anyone else have any suggestions about this? I just knew this. Okay. Then let's move to our last question, which is, I have a query that I have customized field in BC version 14 database field and data in base standard table. Now I want to upgrade to BC online version. So when I convert all the tables to AL base app, it will create fields in the base app. Now
Yeah,
BC
he's made
says, okay, that's crazy. Okay.
You
Okay,
cannot
so
say that anymore.
yeah, as in, I don't know why people consider SaaS to be, you know, a restriction more or less. I don't think modifying base app in any case, even on-prem, is the best option. And I think who have tried it have failed drastically and are paying, you know, are already in a queue to be highly fined by Microsoft more or less based on this universal code initiative, where if you modify the base app or you use any kind of code which is only on-prem compatible, then starting calendar year 2023, there will be an additional cost, which will be an incremental cost every year based on number of users that you have. So yeah, modifying base app was never a good idea. And whosoever asked this question, you should never do it. The way we do it as of today is in Business Central 14, we'll make sure that our database is completely Cronus, and all the custom fields and tables that we have in CAL, the data and the tables are switched to extension in Business Central 14. Then there is a very important thing which I would like to talk about specific to this topic, which is, and I'm going to raise it to Microsoft also. So there is something, and maybe I'm also part of that problem where I said it in the beginning because I was super excited. But when you start your journey to SaaS from your on-prem, because Business Central is still under Microsoft mainstream support, what you do is you go to assisted setup, and then in your SaaS environment, then you do a, what is that? Where is that? Okay, setup cloud migration, and then you accept your warning, and then here you select the product. Now here are two products which are relative to NAV or BC in general. One is the current version, which is version 20, and one is the earlier version, which means anything that is less than 20. And that can go till Business Central 14 to Business Central 20, any version. Now I have seen people, not just outside, some people in my team also, and we are trying to correct everyone on that, where people are upgrading customers to Business Central 14, converting their code and data into extension in Business Central 14. And at that point, they start selecting this option and start their replication process. Now let's understand it from the perspective of how many changes have actually happened from Business Central 14 to Business Central 20. Let's talk about the major data related changes. In Business Central 17 or 18, Microsoft added system ID, system created by, system modified by, and date and time on every table, which means every record will have values for it. At the same time, the whole API engine changed in one of these versions, where every record which is exposed on API needs to get a GUID, which was done in the earlier versions of Business Central, which is Business Central 14 and 13, and that need to be cleared from every record because now system uses the system ID as the API key. Then there are some other changes like emailing changes, small, minor, but it impacts data and all those things. When you choose this option and try to replicate from Business Central 14, what you have to do after your data replication is over is you have to click one additional app option, which is run data upgrade. And to be very frank, I have seen upgrades where the migration took just 2 hours, but the data upgrade now took 20 hours. What this step does, it execute all the upgrade that needed for that data from Business Central 14 to Business Central 20 as of today. All those steps. One of the biggest step is assigning those 5 system field to each record in all the tables that you have in Business Central, which is the system IDs and created by and modified by and all. And it takes enormous amount of time, and it can also fail sometime. So if you are upgrading someone from Business Central or from Dynamics NAV to Business Central SaaS, take them to the matching version on-prem. It takes less time to upgrade customers on-prem and then replicate them to the matching version SaaS. So as of today, just before this call, I was doing a go live, and the customer was coming from NAV 2009 and they were going all to BC SaaS. I did upgrade them to Business Central 20.2 on-prem, and then the replication just took an hour. And this is not just the Business Central SaaS related issues that I'm talking about. 6 months ago, we have seen a customer with a huge database size upgrading from Business Central 14 to Business Central 19. And his upgrade ran for 28 or 29 hours. On-prem, I'm talking about. Huge server, huge memory, everything huge. And it errored out after that time. Anytime that happens, think about how Microsoft is doing it, even for the bigger database. They do it every cumulative update wise. So what we did, we broke that upgrade from Business Central 14 to Business Central 16, then from 16 to 18, and then 18 to 19. It all got completed in 6 hours. So it looks good that there is a migration path from Business Central 14 to the latest version on-prem or the SaaS version. But it's highly advisable, I'll advise it, that do reach to the matching version on-prem if you're going to SaaS. And if the database size is big, then break your upgrade into multiple steps, because it doesn't add additional efforts now as it used to be in the previous versions of NAV. Because you don't have to do any mergings on intermediate merges, because all is extension if you convert everything as extension on Business Central 14. And then it's just a set of PowerShell command that you need to keep on running to make sure things happen in line. So this approach, whoever is trying this, please don't do it. You can't do that. That's not allowed. The best way out is to convert all your customizations into extension in Business Central 14, move your data from CAL to AL in Business Central 14. Once it is an extension, it'll go as it is, either to the on-prem version or to SaaS version, because it doesn't impact the data of your custom extension, because I'm pretty sure your extension will not have an upgrade routine, more or less. So it doesn't impact your data, your extension, even if you're not building your extension for each version. It's not needed. So try to follow what is time saving rather than taking the max available option, because as of now, Business Central 14 will be live till 2023. So yeah, at least at 2023, people stop using Business Central 14 for replications and all. Any thoughts on this question? Anyone? Okay, if nothing, we can call it for today. Any thoughts? What should we start discussing next? Anything that
It's actually related to me. I don't know if we can do it.
Go ahead.
Remember, I asked you how to convert numbers into string, into words, right? And you advised to use the report 1401.
Okay, we'll do that. That's not a big deal. That will not take the whole session.
I've done it actually. It's just that the decimal part of the amount that doesn't get converted. It goes into numbers like 85 pennies.
That's how it's written, I guess. Yeah, and that's it has been always like that.
They cannot just leave it as is, because the amount as a whole needs to be converted.
Probably I will send some notes from the Indian localization where they have done that.
So it converts everything, every
Yes.
decimal.
Yeah, even decimals. I'll find something. And probably, if I don't know if I've got your email ID.
I'll send his email ID to you, sir.
Yeah.
No worries.
Tomorrow I will be sitting for a couple of hours tomorrow for work, and within that time I will try to send it.
So yeah, any thoughts about the next week? What we should talk about?
Can you give him my email, Saraf, please?
Yeah, sure. I'll send it to him. No worries.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Sandeep.
You're welcome.
Okay. So yeah, if anyone has any thoughts, just send me an email. Before we leave, I just have one quick learning today. So I wrote a script, which I cannot share because it's internal, around what we were doing till last week about the SharePoint connector and all. I was using the API that we all discussed about it, and there was a bulk update that I have to do for the old record link that customer had. And the code was working pretty fine when I tested it out with 20-30 files, and it was all looking good. But today it failed during the go live. And then I actually started reading, and I found this note, which is very important. So when you're trying to read bulk files from SharePoint, or I'm pretty sure for other APIs, do read notes very carefully. For the graph APIs, Microsoft says is very clearly that if you're reading a bulk of data, the result set that you get will always be limited to 200 items. And I just coded it that way that I'll call this API, anything that comes as JSON, I'll start reading it and putting it into a dictionary, and then I'll utilize it to update my data that I needed. But it was only picking 200 objects, and I didn't get it. I thought maybe my code is wrong, or dictionary is not, allowing me to read more than 200 items. But if you get stuck in situation like this, whenever you do a call, and if there are more than 200 items in the result set, you get a static name value combination with this, which is the OData next link, which gives you a URL for the next 200 records. So the tweak on that code would be that I'll do a repeat until till the point I get this from my return string. And if I get this, then I actually do another call, fetch another 200 items, and then whatever I have to do around it. Because this customer for which I was writing this, they had 5,000 record links which need to be converted to SharePoint, and it was only returning 200. So yeah, there are certain limitations on different APIs. This is related to what we did a few weeks ago. So keep an eye on it. If you get stuck on a situation where you're not finding records, it's not about the code that we have written. It's about the number of items or page size that will be returned based on that API call of Graph API.
Yes, this is something called pagination for the REST APIs. Means I already saw this something on the other third-party applications we have integrated with the Microsoft Dynamics BC.
No, this is specific to Graph. So whenever you call a Graph API call, it will only return you results with 200 items.
Means this is the same things we'll also follow for the other APIs. Means if there is a lots of data, we cannot put in a single request.
That depends on that API provider. Like in Business Central, when you create APIs, you can limit how many records or the page sizes, right? I guess there is a setting on the service here, on-prem at least, where you can define the OData or SOAP sizes or result set sizes. So that's based on who is developing that API and how many records will you return per page. But yeah, this was interesting to kind of spend 4 hours into it, thinking that my code is wrong, but actually there was a cap on how many results will be responded out of it.
I also faced the same problem on the January.
Okay. Yes, sir. Sandeep, sir.
Does the limitation of 5,000 items in the SharePoint library also impacts Graph API? This will be interesting to see.
It doesn't actually. So what I did in summary is what I was trying to do is I was trying to read everything that's on the recording based on the description field and checking if that field is available, as in if that description name that comes in the recording is that name is available in the SharePoint folder that they have defined, right? And I didn't want it to do a get call every time to fetch one file per file name. So what I thought is I'll write a routine which will get everything from SharePoint and put it into a dictionary. And what I needed was two things. One is the name of that file. So, and the other was the ID, the download URL for that file so that I can update my record links. So I did it and it ran very fast, but the problem was it was limiting 200. Once I change it to a repeat until till the point I find it out, it again took less than 5 minutes to scan all 5,000 items and give me the download URLs and IDs in my dictionary. And then it was just cal code or AL code to kind of assign those to record links table. But yeah, 5,000 didn't give me a problem the way I was thinking about it, as in the number of files.
Because when we used to use Xerox, 5,000 used to create problems.
But then you are not reading them every time, right? Because now, the way I guess I did it with you in the session, with the way I was doing it, I'm just picking the record links which are part of Business Central or Nav based on the record ID. So it just loads a set of record links into my into my area, and then based on the download URL, I can either download or upload. The 5,000 thing only becomes problem, I guess, may become a problem if you are managing 5,000 file in a page somehow. And I don't know what those limitations will be, but that'll be interesting to see.
Fine.
Okay, so then
Thanks,
see you
Saurabh.
next week, and we'll see.
Thank you, Saurav.
Thanks, man.
Saurabh, if you can stay for 1 more minute.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. I'll just stop this and then we can talk about things.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.